maybe someone has new questions. We will talk more on section information, and we will have some time for questions and answers at the end. We have some new people, so I think we will give a short summary of both workshop first and second. So first, on June 16, we were talking about just general information about ETS, its education testing services, who administers TOEFL and is one of the leading companies in the US in the field of testing. TOEFL stands for Test of English as a Foreign Language and is designed for non-native speakers of English. It was first launched in 1964. The test is based on teaching practices and theories and language abilities all the time. So the test which you pass now reflects these contemporary practices and theories on language abilities. TOEFL IBT is TOEFL internet-based test, reflects real-world academic environment, and I emphasize that it does reflect academic environment. Most of the tasks will be from universities and colleges in the US. And TOEFL tests the communicative competence of the test taker, so your ability to use English for communicative purpose, not just your knowledge of grammar or vocabulary, but how well you can use your knowledge. The scores are primarily used as a measure of the ability of international students to use English in an academic environment. So TOEFL is often used when international students apply to US or some other colleges, actually to all colleges where they study in English. So it was mostly designed for students and for some other needs. All test questions and tasks must be clear, cohesive, at the appropriate level of difficulty and culturally accessible. And we talked about that any question has to be culturally accessible to everyone. So we will not have specific questions about American government, American culture, which you as a person who does not live in the US might not know. The questions should not require background knowledge of the subject and should contain sufficient testable content, which means if they test passive voice, there have to be many examples of passive voice, not only one sentence. So it means that this contains sufficient testable content. And before starting the preparation for the test, and I emphasize this again, you have to find out if your company, college, or institution accepts the TOEFL score, and then what the minimum required score is. So if you apply and you need only 64, you have to aim at 64. You don't need 120, which is the maximum. And really no one requires that number. On the second workshop, we were talking about the ETS website and how you can use it and how it can be helpful for us as test takers. So we found that you can register for the test only on the website. You can find out location and fees and also some free materials for test preparation only on the website. And the website is www.ets.org/TOEFL, and you can find this information there. So we looked into Ukrainian locations of TOEFL IBT. We looked into score interpretation and some test registration policies. We talked about that it's important to bring your ID, which is a foreign passport in Ukraine for Ukrainians, and if you don't have this ID, you will not be allowed to take a test. We also talked about the rubrics for the writing and speaking sections and how you can use these rubrics for self-preparation and self-guidance. And again, all these rubrics and all this information can be found on the website. We also talked about other sections of the ETS website that can be used for self-preparation. We talked about TV channel, their video library, their research archive, and this archive contains over 150 reports and articles which can be used for advancing and improving your vocabulary and reading skills in English. Again, I have a link for ETS Research Archive and ETS Insight series, which we use for homework. We also talked about other tests as an examples that can be used as a preparation tools. ETS administers over 70 tests, and they all have information about this test. So you can use this information just to practice your reading. So today we have the last workshop, and I will make a summary, and we will print out the summaries, and you will be able to pick them up on Thursday next week. Like next Thursday or next Saturday, we will have them at the desk, and you can come and ask the librarian, and she will give you one copy of it. So you will have summary of all three. So today, as I said, we will start with new questions. Maybe you have some questions, and then we will talk on section information. But before we do that, I would like us to introduce ourselves, because we have some new people. So I will start with me. So I am Maryna.
Dimitri. I'm Igor. I'm good.
Okay, nice to meet you. And we are just introducing. So Eugene. Okay. Eugene, we are talking today. It's our third workshop on the TOEFL, and we will be talking today on some section information, and we will have some question and answers. We just had a summary of the previous workshop. I'm sorry, but I think you will try to. Just if you have some questions, just please feel free to ask me. So I wanted to show you what we have been working on since the beginning. So first the workshop was on ETS. I told you what it is, I showed you the website. Then we were talking about TOEFL history, when it was launched, how it was designed, who was involved in the design. Then we talked about TOEFL IBT and internet-based, how the test was developed. So we talked how the questions are tested, how they are evaluated for the content and cohesiveness and all other features. Then we talked about TOEFL IBT structure, and that was one of your homework. We talked about how many sections there are, what they test, and then at home you write about section design. There's a spelling mistake. Section design. Yes, section design. Then we talked about ETS website. We just went through the website and looked what we can access from the website, why the website is so important for us. And then we talked about the scores. We talked about maximum score 120 and the fact that no one really needs it. You have to have your target score, which you will find out at the institution, company, or college that you are applying for. And then for today, we had to read about test tips, and we will be talking about triangulation today. I will be explaining to you something. And then after all this, where I explained something, and in red you have the section that you worked on. So you read about section design and test tips. So all this together, all these three workshops are aimed to give you enough information about the test so that when it comes to preparation, you can do it yourself or with the help of your tutor or some courses. So my goal is that after these three workshops, you will be able to try to take a TOEFL sample, which is on the website, and you will be able to see how ready you are, if you can score on a real TOEFL at the level you want to. So this is the little diagram that reflects how we work, and I want to emphasize that the workshops will not be helpful if you do not work. So you have to read about section design and test tips, and I'm not going to discuss it because it was your homework, and it's really it's very individual, so only particular test tips will work for you and they will not work for someone else, so we will not discuss them, but these two sections are very important for you to be able to take the TOEFL sample test and then the real TOEFL. So I will start with triangulation. When you see the test, you think that if you pass the test, it will open all the doors and it will help you to to reach your goal. But very often with the TOEFL, it doesn't work like that. And to show you an example, I wanted to show you two tests with two scholarships. One scholarship is for undergrads. So an undergrad goes to US college for a year and studies there. And it's called UGrad, or Global Undergraduate Exchange Program. It is administered by Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs of the United States Department of State. So it's the US scholarship for a year, and it targets non-US students. I worked with two UGrad students in the US. They come for a year, they study there, and then they go home. So it's very interesting how they are selected to go. You know, it's a big selection process, it's like a competition. And what is interesting, that on the first stage, there is only application review. On the second stage, there is interview with finalists. And only on the third stage, finalists take TOEFL IBT. So you see, TOEFL is not the first stage, it's the third, the last one. And this is very important for you to remember, that very often TOEFL is not the only measure of your language ability. It is one of the measures. So you can have the certificate and your score, but if you cannot talk with your business partner or your professor, that score would not mean much. And even in US governmental scholarships, you can see that they triangulate, they find a compromise. They do not trust only standardized tests. They first ask you to complete an application. Then secondly, they have interview with you. And when you talk, you know, in person, you can see how well this applicant knows English. And only the third stage is TOEFL. Then I want to show you another example of Fulbright graduate student program. Again, it's a US scholarship. It targets non-US students, and the students compete to get a scholarship to obtain master's degree. So it's for masters, sometimes PhDs, and for scholars. And again, selection process is the same. First stage is application, which has two essays. Second is interview again, and only third again is TOEFL IBT and GRE. So again, we see that TOEFL is not the first and is not the only measure, it's the last measure. First they check your ability to write, because application, well, you have to, it's in the written form, you have to complete the application, and then they check, they have an interview with a semi-finalist, so they hear how well the person can speak English, and only then the person, the finalist, takes TOEFL. So this is very important to remember, that you never will have only TOEFL to evaluate your English ability. It will be TOEFL and your resume and your and some applications and maybe some interviews. So it's not one test. Okay, and that's very important. Some of you were interested in passing TOEFL to be able to have some, to be able to run some business. So it's very important to remember for you that yes, you will have a score, but the most important for your business or your company will be to be able to communicate. So that's very important for you to remember about this triangulation process. It's not only TOEFL. There are many, many components of your language skills evaluation. Okay. Yes. No. Oh yeah. Okay.
In the real life, if it's possible, if for example everyone has a good skill of communication, and if it's possible to pass the review without TOEFL, if for example the company accepts everyone for his communication skill, but he has not TOEFL, and this person don't want to take the TOEFL. If he was admitted for a job in this company,
Well, it's up to a company. If they like a person and they see that he or she can write an email, can communicate, then they might say, well, we don't